Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. But first, let me check in with my co-host here, JC, up in frozen tundra, Buffalo, New York. How you doing, JC?
Oh, you are so dramatic, Ms. Wendy. I'm doing quite fine. It's not that frozen. Still have grass to cut. Everything's fine up here. Doing
All
good.
right. Well,
how are you?
I'm a Floridian now, even though I grew up in Pennsylvania. So anything below 60, we turn into, like scaredy cats and start crying and complaining. And then we have to wear these things called socks that we don't wear, 10 months out of the year. But other than that, doing good. And
Good.
Interesting enough, our guest today is just moved to Florida, and then the weather dropped. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Kelly. It gets better, I promise you. So welcome to the show, Kelly Price. Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. I am literally wearing socks with my Birkenstocks right now because my feet are cold.
Well, welcome to Florida from Kansas.
Thank you.
We're glad that you're here. You are the owner, right, of Thrive HR LLC?
Yes, correct.
And you bring powerful insights into leadership, workplace culture, and the real impact of people-first strategies, which I wish everybody would. You used to be a VP of HR. You have deep experience with everything, recruitment, benefits, and organizational strategy. Feel like our paths have aligned. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now, literally where you're located and figuratively speaking.
Sure. So I grew up in Kansas City, went to Kansas State University, and went in there with the intention to study psychology. And I remember my high school teacher, I did independent studies. I was like very into psychology, like this is what I'm doing. He said, you're going to hate the coursework. So just like power through it. And I got there and I was like, I hate this. It's terrible. I quit. So my girlfriend, my girlfriends and a couple of others were in the hospitality school. So I decided to switch to hospitality and found that was really a lot of fun because I love to travel. I love the whole service aspect of it, the service industry, and fell into that. And I swear I'm getting to human resources, but worked for Marriott for a couple of years, actually lived in Miami for about a year and a half. I was in my 20s, so it's a completely different experience than I'm having in Babcock Ranch, Florida. But it was a lot of fun. And then moved back to Kansas City and was ready to get out of hospitality because of the schedule. And
yes.
and I actually got hired by a staffing agency. So, if anybody out there started at a staffing agency, a lot of us came from retail and hospitality because you know how to hustle.
Right.
So got into recruiting and really loved that. And then just kind of grew my career from there. And I found myself repeatedly in situations where things needed to be turned around, excuse me. Even in the staffing agency, that office that I worked in had not been profitable for probably 2 years. And I remember we just busted our butts so hard trying to make that office profitable. And they hired me as the operations manager. So I was kind of running the office and doing recruiting. And after about 6 months, we made $4. Yes, $4 in the positive. And my regional manager was just like so excited. And then it just kind of went from there. So that kind of ignited my excitement to be in a situation where you turn things around, they take the pieces of the puzzle apart and you put them back together. And then I just kind of found myself doing that over and over again. went to a startup organization that was actually owned by the Farrell family. I was working for Farrell Gas. He bought a dental company, which was a total left turn. They had
Yeah, a little bit different there.
just a little. And the dental industry is so different. I don't know if either one of you have ever worked in it. I worked in it for 8 years. And when I quit, I was like, I just don't have any passion for this industry at all.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that do. So nothing against it by any means. It just was not my thing. But we went from 11 people in the corporate office and 10 locations to 75 in the corporate office, 800 in the field, and 32 locations while I was there, and grew the HR department from me
One
to,
person.
yeah, to 17. Primarily recruiters because it was such a growing industry and a high
Yeah.
turnover industry,
Absolutely.
unfortunately.
I'm actually speaking at a dental conference this year coming up in 2026. So
Awesome.
a little side note, not to interrupt you there, but I did the same thing. I swear. I think our paths like just are perfectly aligned. That I went to school for healthcare administration, got 2 degrees in it, a master's in healthcare administration, and then got into it. It was like, oh no, this is not my cup of tea here. So now as
Yeah,
a consultant, I do have a lot of clients that are healthcare organizations that they're too
that's
small to
awesome.
have HR, so that I help them out. So I figured out a way to merge them together, but you're so right. What we think we want to do when we're, 16, 17, 18, heck, even in our 20s, then we go and get all this education, and then we find some other job somewhere. We're like, well, I really like that one a lot better. So let me focus on that one. So thank you
Yes.
so much for sharing that. I have a question for you. With all of
Yes.
this experience, and now you're obviously, helping a lot of companies who are in need of HR. What impact can HR really make on a company's bottom line?
I mean, I truly believe that HR can make or break the organization because you are working with the most important part of the organization, and that's the people that work in it.
Yeah,
Because I always say with the small business owners, I want to work with those owners, founders, executives who had this passion and excitement for an idea, and their talent got them to where they are. And then they're like, oh crap, now I have employees. What do I do with these people?
right.
Because you can't grow without additional resources. And sometimes that's technology and AI now and lots of other things. But the reality is that you're going to have to add people. And once you start to get more than 10, 15, 20, I mean, this is our world, right? You start to get that many people and you're like, okay, I need some guidelines and some policies and a PTO package and benefits. And then I need to performance manage them. And should I make them work in the office or should I let them be remote? And what about when they get sick and all of these things? So I think it truly can make or break the organization for a couple of reasons. One, if you are not aligning your people strategy with your business strategy and starting with your business strategy first and saying, what am I even trying to accomplish from a business standpoint? And then saying, how am I going to do that through my people? Then you're completely missing the boat, in
Right.
my opinion. And then two, as we all know, you can accidentally tank your business financially by doing something completely illegal that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with your business.
And exactly. And not to interrupt you again, but JC has some stats to share, because it's not just about in your opinion, Kelly, you're actually right.
Well, thanks.
Companies with strong human
Cool.
resource practices, they can see up to a 3.5 times increase in revenue growth and a 2.1% increase. 2.1 times increase in profit margins compared to peers with less effective HR functions. And interestingly, former operations professionals who transition to HR roles, believe it or not, they are 32% more likely to align HR strategies with business outcomes, enhancing efficiency and decision making, and sometimes bringing in more than $4 a month. Back to you.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that last stat that you shared, JC, because I one of my favorite things to do in an organization is to bring someone in to the HR department who is not a traditionally trained HR person. And
Right.
like, shout out to everybody who got their degree in HR because you knew you wanted to do that early on. I think most of us didn't. And I think most of the best people didn't, because you get into the field and you have to figure out how to do the work,
Yeah.
and like you get it, and you're not just sitting in the background talking about theory. You actually had to do the work, so you can come in and you're so much more successful because you understand what the people in the business are dealing with because you've done that job or
Right.
something similar.
Exactly, exactly. And in HR land, and I'll say this firsthand, we're not taught traditionally about the business. We're talking about, oh, stick
No.
in your little hole here, and you're in the policies, and you're in the benefits, and your compensation, and your pay. But when it comes down to is it's people. We in the
Yes.
people first is what matters in business, and that's how a people first strategy drives real growth. Kelly, why do you prefer working with small businesses over large organizations?
Yeah, easy answer for me. Impact is so much easier to make in small business. I had a client when I first started about 3 years ago, and they had 12,000 employees. And I did the project because a friend of mine was the chief people officer and they needed an RFP for a new HCM. And so we did the RFP, we selected something, and my project was kind of over because they were going to implement it post. And then as I was having conversations with my girlfriend 6 months later, she's like, they still haven't even signed the contract.
Oh,
And they probably spent, I mean, they spent six figures just on the project to determine what to get. So,
wow.
I mean, it was just an utter waste of money with very limited impact. Where in small business, you're working with the business owner, the decision
Yeah.
makers. Things can happen so much faster, and you can impact the business and the people so much more directly.
Yeah. Hey, JC, do you have some stats on small businesses that prioritize people first strategies?
Absolutely do. They're 2.3 times more likely to report significantly higher employee performance and 1.9 times more likely to achieve above average financial performance. Back to you.
It's so important. That's from Gallup. And, I have a couple other statistics from Gallup for people first business growth. It's higher profitability, as he just mentioned. Highly engaged employees are linked to 20%, 21% greater profitability. And even if you're a nonprofit, I've been on quite a few nonprofit boards, we're still looking for revenue and sales. So,
Yes.
even if you're in a nonprofit, if you're like, oh, I'm not looking to be rich, you still got to pay your bills. And so if you're able to be more profitable as a business, no matter what your size, then you can give your employees more money. And then they're more likely to not only stay, but stay engaged and refer their friends who are looking for new jobs. We could also help with an increase in productivities. Companies with highly engaged employees see up to a 22% increase in productivity. And I'm not a fan of saying, oh, employees that work in small companies are always going to be engaged, because that's not necessarily the case. It does depend on management, and management also
Yes.
depends on HR, or in our cases, HR consultants. So it's super important. I have another question for you, Kelly. Why should leaders invest in what many see as a cost center like HR? And I think we've kind of covered this a little bit, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Because when you actually have people working in a way, I'm going to just say, if everybody's rowing in the same direction, you save time and money. Like, here's a stat for you on one of the clients that I worked with. Their warehouse had 200% turnover. And the amount of money they were spending on turnover, retraining, temp agencies, just ridiculous errors, refunds to customers, reshipping things. I mean, just utter waste of money. And when we were able to come in and say, okay, why don't we do a 30, 60, 90-day review? Why don't we do some more assessments with the temps that are coming in? Why don't we actually interview the temp? Why don't we have, instead of just having them start, Why don't we have more conversations and accountability? Why don't we do some leadership training for your warehouse supervisors on how to set expectations? Why don't we do some safety training so people aren't getting hurt? I mean, I could talk for 20 minutes about this probably,
Yeah.
which I won't, but it's such a once you start to see the results, it becomes so clear why, okay, this makes sense. And it seems so obvious to do, but at the same time, when you're not doing it, and it's like the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. It's not going to happen.
Right. Absolutely.
Organizations that invest in strategic human resources, they see a 22% higher profitability and a 21% higher productivity compared to those that treat HR as a purely administrative function.
Yes.
Back to
Thank you so much for that, JC, because it's so important. There's so many companies that they don't treat HR as strategy. And maybe the person that they have is not strategic. They're just there, putting out fires and doing administrative work. And we need that too, but we need a higher level of strategy. So for the small business owners that are listening, or small business operations people that are listening, even though if you can't afford a full-time HR person who has the experience that like Kelly and myself have, you could still seek out a consultant that can help train your administrative person. And more importantly than training them on how to do their job, or equally important, is to train them on, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me make a phone call.
Yes, absolutely.
And I
Yes.
get that a lot. I mean, people aren't calling me or texting me or emailing me in the middle of the night because things are going well. Something's usually happening.
Right.
I mean, I was going to bed last night and I got a text from a client. And I was like, yeah, call me at 9 a.m. And it was a 15-minute conversation, but it's going to keep them out of court because they're going to terminate somebody who,
Yep.
is not living up to the game. And they did the right thing because they've been listening to me, even though they're a small business. They've been listening to me of saying, give them the feedback. No termination should be a surprise. They should know that, hey, you're walking on eggshells here. So what are your thoughts on that, Kelly?
Generally, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. It's just about, I think there are so many people right now that are afraid to be honest and afraid to give feedback. I've had a lot of conversations lately with managers about, I don't want to say the wrong thing. They're
Yeah.
paralyzed because they're so afraid to say the wrong thing that they say nothing. And I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about balancing flexibility and accountability, because they're like, these people want flexibility and they attribute that word to a total and complete lack of control over people. And it's like, no, those are not the same thing. And there's so much education and continued conversation about it, but just having the ability to pick up the phone and call you, Wendy, or call me or call JC and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Is this right? Or what would you do in this scenario? Has become so meaningful. And even for us, it's like I still have my HR pals that I call every once in a while and say, man, this is a doozy and I need somebody just to run this past because I think I know what to do. But have you experienced this before? And what would you do? People are so unpredictable on top of it that you have to really think about multiple different scenarios of how they may react or what's going to happen next and how
Yeah.
you're going to react to that and what you do. So I do a ton of role playing with clients over the phone and say, if this happens, what are you going to do? If they freak out, what are you going to do? And a lot of times I say, okay, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen? Let's talk about that, because it rarely happens. Sometimes it does happen, but then you work backwards and it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, it really does. Leaders can tell if their HR and people foundation is strong or if it's quietly holding them back, like you said, because not everybody is willing to speak up. They're afraid they're going to, hurt somebody. You could still be professional and be empathetic and hold people accountable.
Yes.
And thank you for saying, preparing for the worst case. So preparing all the managers for the worst case. The employee's going to go away after you terminate them, or they're going to come back and try to sue you. Do we have the documentations to fight a lawsuit? Yes or no? And then I also would say, using analytics is so important. So with that said, JC, you have something about analytics.
Companies with high people analytics maturity are 5 times more likely to make faster, more informed decisions, and 6 times more likely to have agile, data-driven HR functions that truly and directly support business goals.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, looking up human capital trends is so vital. I don't care if you have 5 employees or 5,000 employees, because we do, if it's one department and somebody, there's always voluntary turnover or involuntary turnover in that department. Your gut, and our guts don't have actual instincts or facts, people, but your gut goes, oh, it's probably the manager in that department. But it could be the compensation is not high enough and there's no flexibility in schedules or whatever it might be. And the manager gets blamed, but the manager's like, I've been trying, and HR or somebody's been shooting me down. So don't just immediately blame what seems to be the easiest person to blame, because then they may come over and sue you too. With that said, Kelly, what does people first culture look like in practice? And if we have small business owners that are listening to us today, how can they, what advice would you give them today to say, you know what, I need to make some changes and I need to start focusing on my people first?
Absolutely. I would start by literally making an org chart. Some people call it an accountability chart. I work with a lot of EOS implementers and they use the accountability chart. But I think it's a really great way to be able to then see who's in what spot and literally whiteboard it. Write down, what are you missing? Who's a really good performer and who are the ones? Make a list of the names that you think these names are issues, and then talk about what makes them an issue. And going back to what you were just saying, Wendy, is so important too, because get your leadership team together and have that conversation all together about that accountability or org chart and get the feedback of what's working and what isn't. Because that's really the easiest place to start, to say, okay, if our revenue is down because we're not getting enough sales and you're trying to be a nationwide company and turns out you have 2 salespeople, well, that's a pretty easy answer, right? I mean, I'm being a little facetious because that just makes it easy. But I think those things, when you put them on paper or on a computer screen or however you want to do it with your leaders or managers, they have a lot of ideas about what's happening and they know, because you also have your own biases. You were talking about assuming that something is the issue. And a lot of times leaders, something just bothers them because it bothers them. Like,
right.
I was literally having a conversation with somebody today telling me a story about how he had an employee who he told could have 1 free Coke every day. And the dude drank Coke after Coke after Coke after Coke. And he was like, I hated that guy. And I'm like, do you have any idea what he did or if he did a good job? And he was like, no, but I hated him.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of even a dozen Cokes a day would totally be worth it. No problem. That's going to be way cheaper than just putting an Indeed ad out there for 20 minutes, right?
Right. I mean, I kind of took a left turn there with that comment, but in general, pay attention to who your people are and ask the people who are working with them what's working and what's not working. So I would start by just outlining that and figuring out, do you have the right people in the right seats? Do you have enough people in this, and do you have enough seats, or do you have too many? Because that's such a big part of it, especially in small business. Multiple times, I'm sure you see this too, where it's like, well, this guy, John, he's great. He doesn't really do anything, but he's worked here since he was 20 and I grew up with him.
Yeah.
So I can't really fire him. And I'm like,
well, you kind of can, or you could do something else empathetic, which is as long as he's not a jerk and destroying the culture, but you could, I don't know, give him some learning and development opportunities. So maybe he can do a job that is available. You can coach him, you could mentor him. Go ahead, JC.
Yeah, you could promote him to vice president.
Right?
Perfect.
Promote the
Yeah, there you
problem.
go. Now you just sit over there and get more money and do nothing, right?
Make
You
them the
know,
head of sales.
there's
Yeah.
there's so many things that people, I find that sometimes when companies leadership, and I want to get back to the word leadership in a moment, when they're being too nice, they actually get to take an advantage of, and they're the ones that, the rest of the company suffers, because eventually the person that's sitting around doing nothing, they may enjoy doing nothing and keeping that up and keeping up that paycheck, but then they're the ones that, accidentally get injured or have a workers' comp injury, or, an OSHA violation, or, they're the ones that accidentally or intentionally file a discrimination suit, or the opposite. They are now harassing people, and now there's some bias and disrespect going on. So you mentioned the word, Kelly, you mentioned a few times, like, about the leadership and the org chart. And I just wanted to say, the leader as a role, it drives me batty when people say, this is our leadership team over here. And it's like, well, anybody can be a leader from any position that they're in. So just because you're on the org chart up here, don't assume that they have the leadership capabilities. Do assessments, do training, and hold them accountable for complying with the expected behaviors. What are your thoughts on there? I just feel like leader should be an action, not a role.
Oh, preach, Wendy. Yes. Yes. I mean, especially again in small business. It's my cousin, my brother, my buddy. I brought him on because I like him, I know him, I trust him. And often you get down the line in a successful business, and it turns out the people on your leadership team are completely incompetent. And I don't mean that to be unkind, but they're not who you would hire. So a lot of times when I'm working with that owner or CEO, I say, if this person applied for the job now, would you hire them?
Right.
And that often makes them realize the answer is no. And again, that doesn't mean let's fire everybody. And that's not what you do. Turnover isn't the answer, but repurposing education, development is. And a lot of times too, the leader of the group is sitting out in the middle of the accounting department.
Yeah.
And you don't even know that unless you know that.
Yeah.
I have a client who likes to joke with me and say he never had HR problems until he had HR. And I'm
It's
like,
like,
yeah,
well,
yeah, you did.
yeah,
Yeah, you did,
yeah, you
buddy.
did. Everybody else knew that you had them. You just didn't have
Except for
anybody to
you.
help you, or blame, right? We get the blame a
That's
lot
right.
too.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Companies with a strong people first culture, they see a 72% lower burnout rate overall and a 56% higher employee engagement turnout, both critical drivers of retention and productivity at the end of the day. People first culture. Back to you.
What are your thoughts on burnout, Kelly? Yeah, I feel like it is the word that I personally have been using a lot lately. My best friend was using this morning in a text message, and I feel like, and I don't know if it's just been since 2020, like everybody just seems burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a very personal relationship with the word burnout, because I got so burned out that I had to quit my job. Personally, professionally, everything. In 2022, when I left corporate America, I was just done. And I did intend to go into consulting, but I had no clients. I had no real anything going on other than the fact that I walked across the hall and told my husband, I'm quitting right now.
Wow.
And, we had had many conversations, so this wasn't a shock, but I was to the point where I could hardly function. So it is a real thing,
Yep.
and something to take very seriously. And, when we do leadership development with organizations, one of the things that I always make sure to include is managing the whole person and looking at their medical programs and what sort of mental health benefits are available, because it definitely has been since COVID. And I think that was a tremendously impactful time for all of our lives, whether you were in school or in the working world. It changed all of us. in some way or another. And I think being able to support people as humans, because we are people, we do this to get paid so we can live. Very few people out there work because it's the thing that they love doing more than anything else.
Right.
So I think being able to support people through their actual lives and the things that are happening outside of work is just incredibly, incredibly critical. And you said this before, you can be empathetic and professional. And I usually say you can be kind and accountable at the same time. It's
Right.
just very easy to do if you just try and just
Yeah.
be a human too. Like I'm so done with the robotic polyprofessional crap. I cannot deal with it. Be a human, be a real person. If you're having a bad day, just say you're having a bad day. It's okay.
Right. Right. Exactly. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Before we
Yeah.
wrap up, how can people connect with you best?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to find me, Kelly Price. And my company's Thrive HR LLC. My name's a little bit common, but I'm Kelly at thrivehrkc.com as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure that we put your LinkedIn profile in the podcast agenda and the information. And I hope everybody enjoyed this podcast. Feel free to share and listen on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or directly from the Aurora Training Advantage website. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Take care, Kelly.
Thank you so much. You all too.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.